They brought Veyla Norr to the coronation in the same silver chains used to carry condemned books into the royal fire. The court had gathered beneath the black arches of Near to watch Caith Veylan receive the wolf crown. Instead, every face turned toward the widow being led across the moonstone floor. Her archivist robes had been taken after Tomas died. The plain gray dress she wore carried no gild stitching, no record seal, and no sign that she had spent 23 years preserving the laws beneath their feet. Chancellor Morkendrell walked beside her guards. Veyla Norr, he announced, formerly of the Silent Archive, stands accused of preserving forged succession language, concealing prohibited documents, and attempting to disrupt the lawful coronation. Veyla looked toward the throne. Caith stood beneath the wolf banners in ceremonial black, the silver crown resting before him. Once, before kingship hardened every decision into political cost, he had come to the archive to hear Veyla explain why old laws were written with wide margins. So the dead leave room for the living to answer them, she had told him. He had remembered the sentence. He had not remembered her when Morkan called her dangerous. The disputed law was burned by royal order, Morkan continued. Yet fragments have appeared in restricted catalogues under the hand of her late husband, Tomas Norr. A clerk raised a charred strip of parchment bearing Tomas's name. My husband's hand catalogued the document, Veyla said. It did not compose it. The distinction is convenient now that he cannot be questioned. Tomas had died beneath the archive during the winter fire, crushed while keeping the lower vault doors closed against the flames. The official record said he had started the fire to destroy proof of his forgery. Veyla had buried him without his guild ring. Caith descended one step. You were ordered to surrender every surviving copy. I surrendered every copy written on parchment. Morkan turned toward her. The smallest movement passed through his face. Not surprise. Recognition. Caith noticed it. What does that answer mean? It means the law existed before the copy your order destroyed. The court is not here to debate riddles, Morkan said. The succession must be secured before the first full moon bell. Veyla looked at Caith. You burned a page because he told you it was false. The hall went still. I burned a document carrying 3 incompatible inheritance clauses and no complete witness seal. You burned the only clause Morkan allowed you to see. A growl moved through the royal wolves lining the court. Morkan raised one hand. The widow has shown that confinement did not cure her fixation. The archive must now be protected from her. He presented the sealing order. Caith's royal mark waited at the bottom. Veyla understood before he spoke. The Silent Archive had been built beneath the palace, its oldest chambers cut into moon-black stone. To be sealed below was not execution. It was erasure performed slowly. No guild member could speak to her. No record could carry her name. Food would pass through the lower gate until death completed what law had begun. Caith took the order. For one moment, his thumb rested above the wax. Veyla, he said quietly, tell me where the surviving law is. She heard the man he had been beneath the king he had chosen to become. If I tell you before the archive is opened publicly, Morkan will burn it again. You are accusing the Chancellor of altering royal law. I am accusing him of fearing anyone who can read what he removed. Morkan did not protest too quickly. Caith looked toward him. Only once. Then the coronation bells began sounding. Political time closed around them. Caith pressed his wolf seal into the order. He had not burned her with his hands. That was the mercy kings used when they wanted obedience to look cleaner than fire. The sound Veyla made was not a plea. It was one breath leaving a place that had trusted him longer than it should have. Seal the lower archive, he commanded. The guards led her toward the descending stair. As she passed Caith, she stopped. Tomas died keeping the fire from reaching the moth vault, she said. Caith's face changed. Moths vanished from Near generations ago. No, they learned what men do to written truth. Morkan ordered the guards forward. The lower stair curved beneath the coronation hall. Candlelight thinned past locked catalog doors and shelves wrapped in burial cloth. At the final gate, the guards removed Veyla's chains and pushed her inside. Morkan remained beyond the bars. You could have lived quietly, he said. You could have preserved the whole law. I preserved the clause the kingdom could survive. You removed the witness that made the rest dangerous. Morkan's eyes cooled. You still believe truth arrives without consequences. No. I believe lies always ask someone else to pay for them. The gate closed. Stone locks entered their sockets. Above, the second coronation bell sounded. Veyla stood alone among the dead shelves. Something brushed her cheek. Upaliving. Another touched her shoulder. Silver shapes loosened from parchment bindings, catalog cracks, and the hollow spines of books recorded as burned. Hundreds became thousands. Moon parchment moths filled the chamber without sound. They did not know guilt. They did not know crowns. They nested only where burned words had left a margin for return. They settled across Veyla's arms, along her hair, and over the place where her archivist seal had once been sewn. Beyond the gate, Morkan stepped backward. Caith had followed him down the stair. His royal wolf refused to cross the last threshold, claws fixed against the stone. "Veyla," Caith said. She raised her face. The moths lifted from her body in a silver current. Their wings joined behind her until luminous script stretched across the darkness. Only the first sentence formed. "No wolf may inherit the crown through a law witnessed only by the crown." Caith stared at the words. They were from the page he had burned with his own hands. The sentence did not say Caith could not be crowned. It only said the crown could not stand on a witness that had witnessed only itself. The moths had not crowned Caith false. They had only refused to let a burned witness stay burned. Their silver wings held the sentence above Veyla, while the third coronation bell moved through the palace. Morkandrell looked from the luminous words to the stair. "A sentence is not a statute," he said. "An incomplete clause cannot suspend a lawful coronation." "No," Veyla answered. "It is the part you failed to kill." The moths shifted, not toward Morkan, not toward Caith. They followed the broken edges of remembered text, preserving only what fire had separated from parchment. Caith looked toward the unseen coronation hall. The third bell had not yet finished. "Stop the final crown placement." Morkan remained composed. "Your Majesty, 6 ruling packs are waiting above. Delay will be read as weakness. Let them read. The full moon seal closes at the final bell. Then the bell will not complete it." Caith ordered the bell striker bound before the final note could fall. The command halted the coronation. It did not abandon it. The silver crown remained above, waiting for a law capable of holding its weight. Caith approached the archive gate. His royal wolf stayed behind him, claws braced against the threshold. "Open the lower lock." Morkan turned. "The sealing order bears your own mark." "I know. Suspending it without formal review weakens every archive judgment issued under Crown authority. I did not void it." The word struck Veyla more sharply than mercy. He would pause her erasure while using her knowledge. He had not admitted that sealing her beneath the archive required repair. Caith looked through the bars. "Veyla Norr will hold temporary archive. Witness, he gave her standing because the crown needed her hand, not because he had returned the name his seal had buried." "Temporary standing cannot be granted to an erased guild member," Morkan said. "It can be granted by the crown during a disputed succession review. You are relying on the law she claims was altered. I am relying on surviving archive procedure." Veyla met Caith's eyes. Caith had stopped the crown. He had not yet stopped the sealing order. "Record her objection." A clerk wrote it into the coronation docket. The lower lock opened, but the silver chains remained hanging from the gate. Veyla stepped through without touching Caith. The moths followed her, then settled along the margins of the charred strip carried by the clerk. Morkan watched them. "Archive creatures are not witnesses." "No," Veyla said. "They are evidence that words survived burning." "What words?" "Only the ones that left enough margin to return." Caith ordered the witness seal ledger brought from the royal vault. 2 guards returned with a black book bound in wolfhide and closed by 3 metal clasps. "Crown. Pak. Archive." Veyla recognized the ledger. Tomas had repaired its spine the winter before his death. He had complained that Morkan's clerks forced the bindings flat whenever succession language was copied. Old laws were not meant to lie obediently, he had told her. The crown clasp opened beneath Caith's signet. The pack clasp required the marks of 2 ruling alphas. Morkan summoned the Grafin and Holomir witnesses. The archive clasp remained closed. "An archive witness must open it," Veyla said. "You have temporary standing," Caith replied. "Then say before the court why." Morkan's gaze sharpened. "That performance is unnecessary." "No. Secrecy is how a crown becomes its own witness." Caith turned toward the gathered pack lords. "Veyla Norr opens this ledger because the law governing my coronation may have been incompletely preserved, and because the archive office that condemned her excluded her from answering the record. The statement did not restore her guild seal, but it forced the king to name the weakness publicly. Veyla placed 2 fingers against the archive clasp. The metal warmed. Not magic from her blood. Recognition of trained archive touch. Pressure at the hinge. Breath held through the lock phrase. Thumb against the witness notch. The clasp released. Inside, the crown witness line remained intact beneath the late king's seal. The pack witness line had been scored by heat. Half the names survived. The archive witness line was gone, not burned across the whole page. Cut away in a narrow strip. Witnessed only by the crown means the law was made to obey the hand that benefited from it, Veyla said. Morkan examined the missing section. Or the archive witness was never valid. Torn parchment leaves fibers. She lifted the page toward the lamp. Short white threads marked the removal. The moths rose from the charred fragment and settled along those fibers. They did not form a name. They traced the shape of what had been removed. Beside the missing line appeared a small catalog mark. A crescent divided by 3 vertical strokes. Veyla Norr's private restoration sign. Morkan spoke first. A forged catalog mark would be the simplest way to make a missing line appear authentic. Tomas used that mark only when he found a legal wound he could not repair without a second witness. Convenient knowledge from a widow defending her husband. Then open the restoration index. The index was stored beneath the witness ledger. Each private mark corresponded to a sealed description written before repair. The clerk found Tomas's entry. Succession folio, crown accession cycle, archive witness line removed, before binding repair. Original witness identity copied into protected margin. Morkan did not look afraid. That was worse. He looked prepared to explain why a missing witness had been necessary. Copied by Tomas, he said. Catalogued by Tomas. My husband's hand preserved the wound. It did not make it. Caith leaned over the entry. Where is the protected margin? Veyla looked toward the moths gathering beneath the ledger table, where moonlight reached a seam between 2 stones. They nested where the margin was hidden. The stone was lifted. Inside lay a narrow parchment cocoon. Veyla opened it carefully. The moths had preserved only 3 lines. Archive witness present. Crown-only clause refused. Witness. King Oren Veylan. Caith did not move. Oren Veylan had been dead for 9 years. He had also been Caith's father. The margin did not declare Caith uncrowned. It declared the law beneath the crown unfinished. The missing archive witness was the former Wolf King, who had refused to let the crown validate a succession law by witnessing itself. The margin had not dethroned Caith. It had only taken certainty away from the hand reaching for the crown. Morkan read the preserved lines without touching the parchment cocoon. Oren refused a clause, he said. Kings refuse many drafts before accepting law. Veyla held the margin beneath the archive lamp. A refused clause should remain in the archive, not in a coronation fire. Draft objections are not governing statutes. Then why was the objection cut from the witness ledger? Because unfinished language does not belong beside an accession seal. It belongs exactly there, so the next crown knows what was disputed. Above them, the silver crown remained untouched. The bound bell striker hung silent before the final coronation note. Caith looked at his father's name. Suspend the coronation pending witness review. Suspension invites rival claims, Morkan said. Then the claimants may wait beside the same unfinished law I was expected to accept. You cannot leave the throne legally unsealed through the full moon. I can leave the crown where it is until I know what was required to place it. The coronation clerk entered the suspension into the docket. Caith had stopped the bell. He had not yet stopped the law that made the bell necessary. Suspend the lower archive sealing order, he said. Veyla looked at him. Not revoke? Not until the succession record and the charges against you are reviewed. The gate would remain open, but the order bearing his seal remained lawful enough to close it again. He had loosened the chain because he needed the archivist. He had not yet admitted the chain should never have been closed. A measured distinction, Morkan said. A convenient one, Veyla answered. Caith ordered the witness ledger, moth cocoon, charred clause, and restoration index preserved under separate seals. Veyla remained under temporary witness protection, barred from leaving the archive level without royal guard. Protection shaped like custody. Standing shaped like borrowed permission. Reconstruct the pack witness line, Caith said. The Grafen and Hollowmere representatives stepped forward with the hereditary witness seals of their houses. The original pack line had been heat-scored through the center. Moon-moths settled along the blackened edges, but no letters formed. The moths could restore burned words, Veyla said. They could not rebuild witness names never allowed to survive heat. Then their usefulness has reached its limit, Morkan said. Their limit is honest. That is more than can be said for this ledger. The Grafen witness pressed his seal beside the surviving fibers. The impressions warmed the page. Beneath the scored surface, thin pressure marks appeared where earlier seals had compressed the parchment. Not restored ink, physical memory. Veyla angled the ledger toward the moonlight. 2 old pack seals emerged. Grafen, hollow mirror. Beside, each stood a narrow diagonal cut. A refusal stroke, the Grafen Lord said. His Holomere counterpart found the same mark. Those packs opposed Orin during the border division, Morkan said. Their refusal was political, not legal. Witnesses are often political. That is why the law requires more than one office. They sought concessions, then preserve their refusal and record the reason. Old succession cannot be governed by every grievance entered in a margin. No. It must be governed by the witnesses required to make it law. Caith looked at the refusal strokes. My father rejected the crown, only clause. Grafen and Holomere rejected it as well. Or they rejected different language on the same draft, Morkan said. The surviving marks do not prove a shared objection. The argument held. The margin named Orin's refusal. The pack line showed 2 refusal strokes. Neither proved the exact formula all 3 had rejected. Open the statute index, Veyla said. The governing accession statute was destroyed in the winter fire, Morkan replied. The public copy was. You claim another cocoon? No. I claim cataloging. Tomas had taught junior archivists never to trust a law copied only under its title. Every binding repair required a formula index recording what made the statute valid without reproducing protected language. The index shelf stood beyond the lower gate. Caith's wolf still refused to cross. It paced once, then pressed its shoulder against his leg. So did your wolf refuse this archive before tonight? Veyla asked. Since my father's death. The wolf's refusal was not testimony. It was a wound in the bond reacting to a threshold the law had never closed. Royal wolves react to burial stone, mold, old blood. Morkan began. Not to catalog procedure, Veyla said. Caith ordered the index shelf opened. The guards brought out a narrow volume wrapped in gray cloth. Tomas's repair hand appeared along the spine. Veyla found the accession formula. Succession enforcement requires joined witnessing. The next words had been scraped away. Incomplete again, Morkan said. Veyla examined the gutter. The page had not burned. Someone had removed ink with pumice, thinning the parchment until light passed through it. The moths did not move. No burned words remained for them to preserve. Not fire, she said. Erasure, which proves nothing about the original wording. The Grafen witness turned his ancestral seal sideways. 3 small teeth were cut into its base. The Holomere seal carried the same pattern. Veyla looked at the crown clasp. 3 teeth, then at the archive clasp. 3 more. Those are alignment marks. She placed the 3 witness devices beside the scraped formula. Crown, pack, archive. Their teeth fitted the same spacing along the margin. What does that establish? Caith asked. That the statute was designed to be authenticated by all 3 offices on one copy, or that the binders standardized their tools, Morkan said. Veyla pressed the devices into the empty margin. A hidden pressure line opened beneath them. The surviving formula continued in blind embossing, unreadable until all 3 marks rested together. No succession clause may be enforced unless crown, pack, and archive witnesses appear upon the same surviving copy. The formula did not crown another wolf. It only denied this one the comfort of a single witness. The moths did not reveal it. They remained folded along the charred margin, holding only the words fire had given them. The statute had required 3 witnesses. The law placed beneath Caith's crown had preserved only 1. The formula had not named Morkan. It had named the weakness he had expected a crown to ignore. Morkan Drell closed the statute index with 1 measured hand. The tri-witness formula governs ordinary succession, he said. Emergency full moon continuity permits temporary coronation when delay threatens civil fracture. Veyla kept the crown, pack, and archive devices aligned beside the blind embossing. Emergency does not make 1 witness become 3. It permits the Crown to preserve order until the missing offices can be reconvened. By using the clause those offices refused, by preventing 6 packs from treating an unfinished ceremony as an open throne. Caith looked toward the stair. Above them, the crown remained untouched, and the final bell note remained bound inside the silent bronze. What authority supports emergency continuity? The coronation copy prepared for tonight, Morkan said. Show me the copy chain, Veyla answered. A law does not walk from ash to crown without hands. Morkan's gaze settled on her temporary witness seal. You are not restored to guild standing. No. I am only useful while the crown requires someone who can read what its clerks removed. Caith ordered the statute index and witness devices sealed under separate guards. Bring the coronation copy chain. He did not release Veyla from custody. 2 royal guards remained at the archive stair, and the suspended sealing order still bore his mark. Caith had suspended the sealing order. He had not yet suspended the lie that made it useful. The coronation clerks returned with a narrow register bound in white hide. Every official copy of accession law was required to list its source: copying office, verifier, and witness authority. The entry for Caith's coronation had been made 7 years after the Winter Fire. Veyla read the date. After Tomas died. After the damaged archive was reorganized, Morkan said. The source field named a burned succession page verified from surviving Crown abstracts. The copying office was the Royal Legal Chamber. The Crown verifier line carried 2 clerk seals. The pack verification field said unavailable during border dispute. The archive verification field was blank. Who declared the burned page complete? Caith asked. Morkan pointed to the legal chamber seals. Authorized Crown copyists. Neither was an archive witness, Veyla said. Archive standing had collapsed after Thomas Norr's forgery investigation. Then the office that accused the archive used the archive's absence as permission to verify its own law. A Crown only clause is not stability, Veyla continued. It is obedience written in a circle. Morkan did not raise his voice. The emergency copy was never represented as the original statute. It was represented as the enforceable continuity version. Enforceable by the office that benefited from enforcing it. Enforceable because the kingdom required a lawful center. Caith turned another page. Where is the source inspection record? The register referred to a copy room preparation docket. The docket listed 3 actions performed before the continuity version was approved. Ash cleaning. Margin trimming. Obsolete formula removal. Veyla looked back at the scraped statute index. Pumise. The legal chamber steward was summoned from the coronation hall. He arrived pale but precise, carrying the tool register from the royal copy room. Pumice blocks had been issued during the reorganization after the fire. The purpose column read removal of obsolete accession formulae from reusable reference leaves. Morkan folded his hands. Copy rooms routinely scrape superseded wording. Parchment is not discarded when lawful revision leaves the material usable. Who declared the tri-witness formula obsolete? Veyla asked. The Continuity Council. Names. The steward opened the council page. 2 crown jurists. 1 pack mediator who had died during the Grafen unrest. Chancellor Morkan Drell as presiding officer. Morkan met Caith's gaze. Presiding does not mean composing every revision. No, Veyla said. It means the erasure passed through a room you controlled. It means I administered a kingdom after a fire destroyed its legal memory. The record placed Morkan inside the procedure. It did not prove his hand held the pumice. Caith ordered the remaining blocks seized and their mineral dust compared with the residue in the statute gutter. Then he looked at Veyla. What record comes before the reorganization? The Winter Fire report. Morkan answered first. The report established that Thomas Norr entered the lower vault with prohibited fragments and failed to emerge before the collapse. It also became the basis for calling him a traitor, Veyla said. Open it. The report is sealed under royal disaster authority. Caith held out his hand. So was the law beneath my crown. The fire report arrived in a scorched iron case. The official summary occupied 1 page. Suspected ignition within restricted archive level. Unauthorized protected fragments recovered near Thomas Norr's station. Vault keeper deceased during destruction of evidence. Veyla's face remained still, but her fingers pressed white against the table. Caith turned past the summary. The full report contained witness statements the judgment had not cited. A stair guard had smelled smoke descending from the upper copy corridor before any flame appeared below. A junior archivist had seen Tomas running toward the moth vault with a water cloak and 3 protected margin boxes. The lower door mechanism had been examined after the collapse. Locked from inside, Morkan read over Caith's shoulder. A man destroying evidence may also lock a door. Then why carry water? Veyla asked. To control what burned, or to keep fire from reaching the only place erased law could survive. The report included a final diagram of the vault. Tomas's body had been found against the inner locking wheel, one hand still caught beneath the release bar. The protected margin boxes stood behind him, unopened. The moth vault itself had not burned. Only the corridor outside it had collapsed. Veyla read the recovery notation. All protected margins retained within sealed chamber. Transfer requested by Royal Legal Office after clearance. Requested, Caith said. Were they transferred? The destination field was blank. Morkan's expression remained prepared, not frightened. Blank transfer fields were common after the fire. Half the archive staff was dead or dismissed. Veyla touched Tomas's catalog mark beside the diagram. He did not die hiding forgery. The report had placed him inside a locked vault and called the lock guild. But Tomas had turned the wheel from within while fire moved down from the copy rooms above. He had not sealed himself beneath the archive to destroy the protected margins. He had sealed the moth vault to keep someone outside from collecting them. The locked moth vault had not named who came for the margins. It had only changed what Tomas Norr's final door meant. Morkan Drell remained beside the fire report. Locking protected material away from lawful recovery can still be concealment, he said. A man may preserve documents for the wrong purpose. Veyla looked at the diagram of Tomas's body beside the inner wheel. Then opened the recovery chain. The destination field is blank. The request was not. Caith turned to the disaster clerk. Bring every transfer petition filed during the winter fire. The clerk returned with a narrow chest of smoke-stained rolls. Each petition carried a source office, requested material, transport authority, and receiving seal. The Royal Legal Office had requested 3 protected margin boxes from the moth vault. The petition was entered 2 hours before the first alarm bell. Veyla read the time twice. They requested recovery before the fire began. Morkan did not flinch. Legal offices routinely prepare removal orders when archive unrest threatens access. What unrest? Tomas had already refused to release disputed fragments. Then the fire was not the reason they wanted the boxes. It was the reason the transfer became urgent. Caith placed the request beside the coronation copy chain. What was in the boxes? The fire inventory listed them by category. Pack refusal margins. Accession witness fragments. Continuity drafts withheld from public copying. The third description made the gathered lords move closer. Veyla touched the line. Those were the exact materials needed to test the crown-only version. Or the materials most likely to inflame rival claims, Morkan said, which is why they belonged under 3-witness custody. The archive had become unstable. The archive was unstable because one office kept asking it to surrender the pages that limited that office. Caith ordered the boxes brought from the sealed moth vault. The suspended sealing order allowed Veyla to enter only under guard. Caith followed her down the lower passage carrying the witness lamp himself. The act did not return her profession. It merely placed royal light behind the woman whose knowledge he still required. The vault door bore the dark smear of Tomas's final hand against the wheel. Veyla did not touch it. Inside, moon parchment moths slept along the bindings and ceiling seams. They stirred when the lamp entered, then settled again. They did not lead anyone toward guilt. They nested where damaged text had given them shelter. 3 blackwood boxes stood against the rear wall. Each retained Tomas's catalog seal. Crown, Pack, and archive witnesses opened them together. The first held refusal margins from Grafen and Hollomere. The second contained witness fragments from Oren's reign. The third was nearly empty. Only a strip of binding cloth and a broken archive cord remained inside. Morkan examined the seal. Then Tomas removed the continuity drafts before locking the vault. No, Veyla said. She lifted the broken cord. Archive cords were tied left over right when material entered a box. This one had been retied right over left. A legal copyist's closure. Morkan looked at the knot. Many clerks learn archive binding. They learn the shape. They do not learn why we reverse it when material leaves under protest. Caith leaned closer. What does the reverse knot record? That the custodian released nothing willingly. The box ledger had been fixed beneath the lid. 3 continuity margins entered, 2 removed for legal comparison, 1 retained under objection. Receiving office, Royal Legal Chamber. Return status, none. Beside the objection line stood Tomas's private mark, the crescent divided by 3 strokes. Morcan folded his hands. A custodian's objection does not void a lawful transfer. No, Veyla said, but it should have placed the margins under joined witness until the dispute was heard, unless emergency continuity superseded ordinary handling. Emergency again, the word used whenever one office needed to become 3. Caith ordered the legal chamber's receiving ledger opened. The 2 removed margins arrived there before the fire. One was catalogued as incompatible pack language, the other as obsolete archive restriction. Both were listed as prepared for disposal. Disposed when? Caith asked. The date column had been scraped, not burned. Pumice residue remained in the gutter. Veyla looked toward Morcan. He did not retreat. Copy rooms erase processing dates when a batch is consolidated under a later docket. Then show the later docket. No corresponding batch appeared. Caith ordered the legal chamber closed and its staff held for witness examination. Morcan objected that halting the office during a succession crisis would cripple governance. Then governance may learn to survive without altering its own trail, Caith said. It was an action, not an apology. Veyla returned to the 3rd box and examined the binding cloth. A faint line of soot marked only one edge. Upper corridor smoke, she said. The cloth had been outside the moth vault when the fire began, then returned before Tomas locked the door. The junior archivist's statement was brought forward again. She had seen Tomas carrying 3 boxes toward the vault. But a second line, omitted from the official summary, recorded that 1 box had been taken from him at the copy room stair and returned several minutes later. By whom? Caith asked. The witness had written no name, only legal officer wearing winter continuity chain. Morcan touched the chain at his own collar. Every senior officer on the Continuity Council wore one. The description did not identify him. It identified the office. Veyla asked for the copy room attendance slate. 6 officials had been present before the fire. 2 legal copyists, the continuity mediator, a Royal Courrier, Morcan, and Veyla Norr, summoned as archive authenticator. Beside Tomas's name stood a refusal notation. Archive witness absent. Pack refusal unresolved. Custodian declines authentication. Veyla read the sentence in her husband's hand. For 8 years, the court had said he died, destroying forged succession law. The attendance slate showed he had spent his final hour refusing to authenticate it. Morcan's voice remained steady. Refusal explains conflict. It does not explain ignition. No, Veyla said, but it explains why someone needed the margins without him. The slate carried one final instruction beneath Tomas's refusal. Replace archive authenticator. Retrieve protected margin before moonrise. The order bore no personal signature, only the Continuity Council seal, and its time had been entered before the first flame was reported. The Continuity Council seal had authorized retrieval before the fire. It had not yet named the hand that turned authority into flame. Caith ordered the seal register opened in the coronation hall. Morcan Drell did not object. That seal belonged to the council, not to one officer, he said. Any authorized member could press it during emergency preparation. Veyla stood beneath guard beside the 3 blackwood boxes Tomas had carried toward the moth vault. Then show who held the press. The register listed 4 access keys. Morcan, the continuity mediator, the senior legal copyist, the royal courier assigned to accession records. All 4 keys had been signed out before moonrise. 3 were returned after the fire. The senior copyist's key never came back. She died in the upper corridor, Morcan said. Then her key may have burned with her, Caith replied. Or been taken before she died, Veyla said. The distinction remained open. Caith ordered the dead copyist's effects brought from disaster storage. Her winter chain, ink knife, and scorched key ring remained sealed in linen. The council key was not among them. 8-year-old storage cannot prove what was present at recovery, Morcan said. No, but it can prove the inventory claimed a complete key ring without counting the keys. The disaster inventory did exactly that. Complete personal effects recovered. No key count. No witness signature. Who certified this? Caith asked. A junior legal officer, since promoted to Master of Crown Abstracts, was brought from the upper court. I copied the recovery list from a verbal report. Whose? The corridor captain's. The captain had died 3 winters earlier. Death does not become conspiracy because records survive badly, Morkan said. No, Veyla answered. Bad records become useful when every missing line benefits the same office. Caith ordered the officer held as a witness, not a prisoner. He had learned enough to preserve testimony before it vanished. He had not restored Veyla's guild name or revoked the order that could seal her below again. Action still stopped at the edge of accountability. Open the fire origin plates, Veyla said. The disaster report contained stone rubbings from each corridor where heat first marked the walls. The official summary named the lower archive because the greatest collapse occurred there. But heat did not begin where stone fell last. Veyla arranged the rubbings. The lower vault showed smoke staining without lamp burst. The copy room stair showed upward blistering. The royal legal chamber plate carried a deep crescent burn beneath the pumice cabinet. Oil pooled here. Copy rooms stored lamp oil, Morkan said. Not beneath pumice. An overturned vessel travels. Downhill. This burn climbed the cabinet before crossing the floor. The palace mason confirmed it. The ignition point had been inside the legal copy room, not the moth vault. Note Tomas Station. Morkan remained composed. An accidental copy room fire still could have driven Tomas to destroy prohibited fragments below, except he carried water toward them and locked the vault from inside. Caith opened the old alarm sequence. Who reported the first flame? The upper corridor watchman. His full statement said he saw smoke beneath the legal chamber door, then heard glass break from within. Was the chamber occupied? Caith asked. 6 people were present, Veyla said. The statement named 4 survivors leaving by the eastern passage. Morkan, the continuity mediator, the royal courier, 1 legal copyist. Tomas and the senior copyist were not with them. We left when the steward ordered evacuation, Morkan said. Tomas refused to abandon the disputed material. You left him inside? Caith asked. I left an archive custodian arguing with the senior copyist while smoke entered the room. I had no reason to believe either would remain. It was the first time Morkan placed himself inside the fire's opening minutes. Not a confession. A position in the sequence. What were they arguing about? Veyla asked. The protected margin. Which one? The archive. Witness restriction. Did Tomas refuse authentication again? He refused a continuity measure during a succession emergency. You keep naming the emergency as though it witnessed itself. Morkan's voice cooled. And you keep naming refusal as virtue because the dead man was your husband. Veyla did not answer at once. She loved Tomas. Grief had shaped every year since his death. But grief had not placed oil beneath the pumice cabinet, removed the witness line, or written the retrieval order before the fire. Love can bias a reader, she said. So can power. That is why the law required 3 witnesses. Caith looked at her. Once, he had loved the way she made law touch the body. He had chosen the crown when that clarity threatened it. Now he ordered every survivor's statement read aloud. The continuity mediator claimed Tomas remained in the legal chamber after the others fled. The courier said Tomas had already gone toward the lower stair carrying 1 box. The surviving copyist saw him helping the senior copyist away from the burning cabinet. 3 statements. 3 different last sightings. Someone revised the sequence, Veyla said. Or panic-fractured memory, Morkan replied. Caith ordered the statements compared with the doorwatch ledger. The east passage opened once for 4 officials. The lower stair opened twice. First, for Tomas. Then 3 minutes later for an unidentified continuity officer using a council key. Veyla's breath stopped. Someone followed him. Or a guard used the nearest available key, Morkan said. Then the guard would appear on the watch roster. No guard did. The lower stair record continued. Tomas entered the moth vault corridor, carrying 3 protected boxes. The unidentified officer returned alone before the vault was sealed. What happened during those 3 minutes? Caith asked. The ledger did not answer. But one object had been recovered from the lower stair after the collapse. A broken winter continuity chain, found beside a blood mark untouched by fire. The chain did not name Morkan. Every senior council officer had worn one, but it proved Tomas had not reached the vault alone. Someone from the Continuity Council had followed him beneath the archive before he locked the door from inside. The broken winter chain had not named the officer who followed Tomas. It had only placed council authority beside his blood. Veyla asked for the recovery cloth. The chain fragment lay inside a shallow evidence tray, darkened by age and smoke. 3 links remained attached to a narrow crescent clasp. Morkandrell examined it from across the table. Continuity chains were issued from the same pattern. A fragment cannot identify its wearer. No, Veyla said. But a repaired clasp can identify who needed another. Caith ordered the council regalia ledger brought from the ceremonial office. Every continuity officer received a chain before full moon proceedings. Repairs required a reason, the old medal, and 2 witness marks. The ledger recorded no damaged chain on the night of the fire. The following morning, 1 replacement had been issued under emergency authority. Recipient, Office of the Chancellor. Morkan read the entry without changing expression. My office held spare ceremonial regalia for the entire council. The recipient field names your office, Veyla said. An office is not a throat. Then show who wore the replacement. The witness column was blank. Morkan folded his hands. After the fire, half the palace worked without complete signatures. Yet the chain was important enough to replace before Tomas's body was recovered. Continuity authority could not appear broken during a succession crisis. Caith looked at the crescent clasp. Was your chain damaged? I do not remember an 8-year-old ceremonial repair. That is not an answer. It is the only honest one I have. Morkan's refusal to overreach made him more difficult to accuse, not less. The ledger placed a replacement inside his office. It did not place the broken chain around his neck beneath the archive. Open Tomas's body report, Veyla said. The request changed the room. For 8 years, she had refused to read the final medical page because the court had already used his death against him. Now she held out her hand for it. Caith hesitated only long enough to order the guards away from the table. Not from Veyla. From the paper. He understood that grief was not spectacle. The body report recorded crushing injuries from the fallen shelf. But the original examiner had drawn a second wound behind Tomas's left ear, a narrow curved cut with bruising beneath it, cause undetermined, not consistent with falling stone. Morkan's eyes moved to the crescent clasp. Metal fragments often strike during collapse. This one bruised before it cut, Veyla said. He was struck while the blood was still moving. You are not a healer. No. I catalogued 40 years of archive deaths. Stone tears. Metal edges bite. A clasp swung by a hand leaves both. Caith summoned the old examiner's apprentice, now master healer of the northern ward. She studied the drawing. The wound was made before the collapse. Minutes, perhaps less. Could this clasp have caused it? Caith asked. Possibly. Not certainly. Morkan spoke before Veyla could. Possibility is not identity. No, Veyla said. But it changes Tomas's final movement again. He had not run below alone. He had been followed by a continuity officer. He had bled before the vault collapsed, and a council chain had been broken beside that blood. Caith ordered the coronation court moved from the upper hall to the silent archive stair. Morkan's expression tightened for the first time. Royal succession cannot be judged in a condemned vault. The vault was condemned under a record now, under review. You risk turning grief into public law. No, Veyla said. He risks allowing law to remain private enough to be altered again. Caith looked at her. Will you testify? Not behind another closed door. Then the doors will open. The order did not restore her guild status. It did not remove the guards. But it forced every pack, witness, legal clerk, and crown officer to descend into the place whose silence had protected the official story. At dusk, Veyla stood before the sealed moth vault while the 6 ruling packs gathered along the stair. She did not wait for Caith to grant permission. She placed her temporary witness seal into the lower lock and opened the archive herself. The stone doors moved apart. Cold air crossed the court. Moon parchment moths lifted from the bindings in slow silver currents. They did not circle Morkan or bow to Caith. They settled on charred margins, broken catalogs, and the edges of the 3 blackwood boxes. Only burned words called them. Veyla placed the fire report, body drawing, chain fragment, and regalia ledger on the public table. Tomas was recorded as a traitor because he locked this vault from inside, she said. The same report proves the fire began above him. The protected margins remained unopened, and a continuity officer followed him below. Morkan stepped forward. And none of those facts proves murder. Tomas may have fought an officer attempting lawful recovery. Then that officer should have been named in the report. unless the officer was injured, confused, or believed the encounter irrelevant to the collapse. A dead archivist struck beside protected evidence is not irrelevant. To his widow, no detail could be. Veyla held his gaze. To a lawful archive, no missing detail should be. Caith ordered the surviving legal copyist brought before the public table. The woman had avoided the archive for 8 years. When she saw the broken clasp, her face lost color. Morcan noticed. So do all of us remember clearly now because a widow arranged the evidence dramatically? The copyist's hands trembled. I remember the chain breaking. The stair went still. Whose chain? Caith asked. She looked toward Morcan, then away. I did not see the face. Smoke had entered the lower passage. Morcan exhaled once. Then you cannot identify anyone. No, she said. But I heard Tomas speak. Veyla did not move. What did he say? The copyist swallowed. He said, You cannot take the margin without 3 witnesses. And the other voice? A man answered, Then there will be no archive witness left to refuse. The words did not name Morcan. But the copyist produced one final object she had hidden since the fire. A narrow strip torn from a continuity cloak as she fled the lower stair. Inside its hem, the wearer's office had been stitched in black thread. Chancellor of Near. The black thread named an office, not the man who had worn the cloak. Morkandrell looked at the torn hem in the copyist's hands. Chancellor's clerks wore office cloaks during full moon proceedings, he said. A stitched title identifies custody, not identity. Veyla placed the strip beside the broken continuity chain, then opened the garment issue ledger. The palace does not preserve every cloak assignment for 8 years. The regalia office preserved a replacement chain before Tomas's body was recovered. It may have preserved what covered it. Caith ordered the ledger brought. The public hearing remained on the silent archive stair. No one was permitted to carry the evidence back into the upper court, where closed rooms had already changed too much. The garment register listed 3 winter continuity cloaks assigned to the Chancellor's office on the night of the fire. 1 for Morcan, 1 for his legal deputy, 1 for the senior accession clerk. All 3 had been returned after the disaster. Morcan's cloak was marked smoke damaged. The deputies had no recorded damage. The clerks had been replaced entirely. 3 possible wearers, Morcan said. Your strip narrows nothing. Who returned them? Veyla asked. The register named a single office servant acting for all 3. The servant had died during the fever winter. Another dead hand beneath a complete-looking line. Caith turned to the regalia keeper. Were damaged cloaks inspected before replacement? Normally. Was this one? The keeper searched the repair docket. Morcan's cloak had been cleaned and returned to service. The accession clerk's cloak was listed as destroyed by smoke. No inspection report survived. Veyla examined the torn strip again. The thread is not burned. It may have torn before the fire, Morcan said. The inner wool carries blood. The master healer tested the dark fibers with salt water and moon ash. The stain answered faintly red. Old blood. Too little to identify a person. Enough to show that the cloak had been torn beside an injury, not simply lost in smoke. Morcan did not step back. An officer moving through a collapsing archive could have torn a cloak while helping the wounded. Then that help should appear in the disaster report, unless the officer believed Tomas had attacked first. The argument changed shape but did not disappear. Veyla looked at the surviving copyist. Did you see Tomas strike anyone? No. Did you see him carrying a weapon? No. What did he carry? The protected margin box. And the lower vault key. Morcan turned toward the assembled pack lords. One frightened witness, speaking after 8 years, cannot overturn a succession emergency. No, Veyla said. But a lawful archive does not depend on one witness. She asked for the Chancellor's office movement docket. Morcan's expression remained controlled. Those records contain private counsel traffic. They also record who left your office wearing authority before the fire. Caith ordered the docket opened. The movement book showed Morcan leaving the legal chamber through the east passage with the mediator and courier. His legal deputy had remained behind. The senior accession clerk had been sent toward the lower archive under a retrieval order. Veyla read the entry. Then the cloak may have belonged to the clerk. It may, Morcan said. Where is his statement? The clerk had survived the fire and served 3 more years before dying at the southern border. His disaster testimony existed only as a summary. Assisted lawful document recovery. No location. Luchaimi. No description of Tomas. The full statement was missing. Morkan folded his hands. Border evacuation destroyed many personnel files. Always the files that would tell us whether an office acted lawfully, Veyla said. Always the conclusion you prefer. Caith turned the movement docket toward the copyist. Was the voice you heard the accession clerk's? She closed her eyes. I cannot swear it. Morkan's breath left quietly. Then we remain where we began. No, Veyla said. We know the Chancellor's office prepared retrieval before the fire, sent an officer below after Tomas refused authentication, and replaced office regalia afterward without a complete witness trail. Office conduct, not murder. Not yet. The words carried no triumph, only refusal to let uncertainty become innocence by exhaustion. Caith looked at Veyla. Once, he had allowed Morkan to tell him that incomplete evidence required decisive authority. Now he ordered uncertainty preserved instead of buried. Open every pre-fire succession order issued by the Chancellor's office. Morkan's jaw tightened. Your Majesty, those orders include emergency plans never enacted. Then the record may show which one became useful after Tomas died. The legal clerks brought a sealed planning volume. Its pages contained contingencies for pack refusal, disputed coronation, missing royal heirs, and archive incapacity. One order had been drafted 6 days before the fire. Emergency archive vacancy declaration. Conditions for activation. Archive authenticator obstructs continuity review. Protected margins withheld. Lower archive rendered inaccessible. The next line had been left blank for a name. 3 days later, Tomas Norr's name had been entered. Veyla did not breathe. Morkan spoke first. Contingency documents are prepared before crises. His name may have been added after the fire. By whom? Caith asked. The filing clerk. Under whose authorization? The Chancellor's office. The declaration continued. Upon confirmation of vacancy, Crown abstracts may proceed without archive witness until guild restoration. The order had not merely anticipated Tomas's removal. It had created the legal condition that allowed the Crown-only copy to replace him. Show the activation date, Veyla said. The clerk turned the page. The declaration had been activated at the first fire bell. Before Tomas's death was confirmed, before the moth vault collapsed, before any healer reached the lower stair, Morkan's voice remained steady. Archive incapacity existed the moment the vault became inaccessible. Tomas was still alive. The office did not know that. The office did not wait to know. Caith read the authorization line. The order bore the Continuity Council seal. Below it stood a second notation. Vacancy necessary to preserve Crown verification. Veyla touched Tomas's name without covering it. They had prepared to remove his witness before the fire. Then they declared the archive empty, while he was still behind the door protecting it. Morkan did not confess. He defended the structure that had made the act possible. Without continuity authority, 6 packs would have contested the throne before dawn. And so one living archivist became an empty office, Veyla said. The public hearing had begun with a torn cloak. It ended with a vacancy order written before the man it erased was dead. The order did not prove who struck Tomas. It proved his death had solved a legal problem the Chancellor's office had already prepared to name. The vacancy order had prepared an empty archive. The next record showed who had agreed to use it. Caith ordered the royal destruction docket opened before the assembled packs. Morkan Drell did not protest. The Crown had to decide which fragments could still govern, he said. A kingdom cannot remain suspended beneath every disputed margin. The docket was brought from the upper legal vault. Caith's wolf mark stood across the first page. Destruction authorized. Disputed succession folio, lacking complete witness authority. Reason: risk of civil fracture during accession preparation. Caith read the order. I signed this. You signed after the archive was declared vacant and the surviving Crown abstracts were verified, Morkan said. Verified by the office that declared the archive vacant, Veyla answered. The legal chamber acted under continuity law. Continuity built from Tomas's absence while he was still alive. Caith had not started the fire or written the vacancy order. But years later, when Morkan placed the disputed folio before him, he had chosen destruction over uncertainty. What did you see before you burned it? Veyla asked. 3 incompatible clauses. No complete archive witness. No surviving pack line. What did you ask to see? His silence answered. Morkan stepped between them with words shaped like protection. The prince inherited a kingdom divided by Orn's failed succession negotiations. I advised him that preserving an unauthenticated folio would invite rival claims, and he accepted that advice, Veyla said. Caith looked at the docket. Yes, the word did not repair anything. It placed him inside the chain. What else was attached to the destruction request? Veyla asked. The clerk turned the page. A source summary. A crown abstract. A continuity opinion signed by Morkan. No fire report. No Tomas refusal notation. No tri-witness formula. No protected margin inventory. The king was shown a law after every record capable of defending it had been separated, Veyla said. He was shown the documents legally available, Morkan replied, because your office had made the others unavailable. Because the archive had failed. The archive was struck, sealed, declared vacant, and then blamed for not witnessing its own removal. Caith closed the docket. Preserve it with the vacancy order. The pacts require a decision before dawn, Morkan said. Grafin has sent riders to its border. Hollowmere will not remain beneath an unsealed throne. Then they may witness what the crown was denied. Caith ordered the doors from the archive stair to the outer moon court opened, not merely to ruling pacts, to guild workers, soldiers, widows, copyists, and citizens barred from the coronation hall. Succession law is not public theater, Morkan said. No, Veyla answered. It became private theater when the crown performed it before witnesses chosen by the crown. Caith looked at her. What is required to reconstruct the statute? Every surviving burned margin, every refusal mark, the crown clasp, pack seals, and an archive witness permitted to read without a guard's hand on the door. He dismissed the guards from her side. He did not restore her rank. But for the first time since Tomas's death, Veyla stood in the silent archive without custody shaping her work. The moth vault was opened before the public. Veyla did not summon the moon parchment moths. She carried the protected boxes into moonlight and read the catalog headings Tomas had preserved. The moths woke only where burned words remained. They lifted from bindings, cocoons, and hollow book spines. They did not circle Morkan or bow to Caith. They settled along charred fragments as Veyla placed them in recorded order. Crown refusal, pack refusal, archive objection, continuity limitation. The wings joined only where text had burned. Lines formed across the court. No succession clause may be enforced unless crown, pack, and archive witnesses appear upon the same surviving copy. Emergency continuity may preserve civil administration, but it may not create, amend, or complete succession authority. A crown may delay accession. It may not witness itself into legitimacy. The crowd did not kneel. They listened. Protected fragments remain incomplete, Morkan said. Administrative continuity still governed during the archive vacancy. Tomas was alive when the vacancy was declared. The office could not reach him, because a council officer followed him below. That remains unassigned. The cloak names your office, not the wearer. The replacement chain names your office, not my throat. The order names your authority. Authority is not murder. No, Veyla said. But it is responsibility. Caith stepped away from the coronation crown. I will not complete accession under the crown, only copy. A disturbance moved through the pack lords. The Near has no sealed king, Grafin's witness said. It has a ruler under review, and a crown that will wait. You risk challenge. I accepted certainty built from an erased witness. The risk already existed. Only the record was made quiet. Morkan faced him. If you weaken the symbol now, rival packs will test every border. I am refusing to let the symbol replace the law beneath it. Caith suspended the crown-only clause, sealed the royal legal chamber, and removed Morkan from control of archive and accession records pending public judgment. He did not accuse Morkan of killing Tomas. The evidence had reached concealment, procedural erasure, false vacancy, and incomplete law. Morkan removed his chancellor's chain himself. You will discover that truth does not defend walls. Veyla looked at the moths holding the statute over the public court. No, people do. Truth tells them what they are defending. One protected margin remained inside Tomas's third box. Veyla opened it beneath the joined seals. It was Tomas's last catalog statement. Archive witness refused. Protected margins retained. If I do not return, record that the fire followed the retrieval order, not the refusal. Beneath the words stood 3 witness spaces. Pack and archive marks were present. The crown space had remained empty for 8 years. Caith removed the wolf signet from his hand and held it near the blank. Would my seal complete his statement? No, Veyla said. Not without my consent as archive witness. For the first time, the Crown had to ask the woman it had erased whether it was permitted to enter the record. Caith did not press the signet into Tomas's statement. He lowered his hand. What would make the Crown's mark lawful here? Veyla looked at the 3 witness spaces. Not permission to complete what he wrote, only acknowledgement that the Crown received it and failed to preserve it. Grafen's witness stepped forward. And the pack mark? To confirm the statement entered public record under joined custody. And yours? To certify the archive did not surrender the margin willingly. Morkan stood without his chancellor's chain near the edge of the moon court. You are turning an archivist's private note into royal judgment. No, Veyla said. We are turning a buried record into evidence before judgment. Tomas's statement did not name his killer. It did not prove whose hand struck him or whose chain broke beside his blood. It proved that he refused authentication, retained the protected margins, and expected the retrieval order to follow him. Caith placed his signet in the Crown space only after the clerk added a line beneath it. Crown acknowledgement of suppressed record. No claim of original witness authority. Grafen and Holomir pressed their seals beside his. Veyla waited. For 8 years, men had used her absence as proof that the archive agreed. Now the record could not close without her hand. She pressed the temporary archive seal into the final space. The moon parchment moths settled along the burned edges because the margin was no longer hidden. Read Tomas Norr's finding, Caith ordered. The public clerk opened the original judgment. Traitor to the archive. Author of forged succession language. Destroyer of protected law. Then he read the corrected entry. Archive custodian Tomas Norr refused to authenticate a Crown-only succession copy lacking joined witnesses. He preserved protected margins during the winter fire, sealed the moth vault from inside, and died before the archive could receive his testimony. Authorship of the forged clause. Unsupported. Treason finding. Withdrawn. Guild honor. Restored posthumously. Veyla did not bow. He preserved the right of another witness to refuse after him. That sentence entered the record. Morkan's public judgment followed. The evidence did not prove that he had struck Tomas or ordered the fire. Caith said so before suspicion became a convenient certainty. But the records proved that Morkan had presided over the council that scraped the tri-witness formula, accepted a Crown-only copy, declared the archive vacant while Tomas still lived, withheld the protected margin chain, and allowed Veyla's exclusion to stand. Morkan faced the six-packs without lowering his head. I preserved a center when the realm was preparing to split. You preserved authority by making every missing witness serve it, Veyla said. And you believe openness will make rival bloodlines merciful? No. I believe secrecy made your choice impossible to challenge. Caith stripped Morkan of legal office and succession authority. The former chancellor would face a joint tribunal for concealment, unlawful erasure, and abuse of continuity power. Not murder. The record would not claim what it could not prove. Then Caith turned toward Veyla. The sealing order is revoked. A clerk brought the parchment bearing his wolf mark. Caith broke the seal before the court. The silver chains were removed from the lower gate. Veyla Norr's condemnation is withdrawn. Her guild standing and archive authority are restored. Restored to what? She asked. The office taken from you. The office that could be erased by a crown seal and reopened only when the crown needed it? Caith looked at the broken order. What must change? The archive cannot remain beneath royal ownership. Its doors must answer to joined witnesses. Its succession records must be open for public reading. No widow, clerk, or pack witness may be excluded because grief makes authority uncomfortable. The pack lords protested. Public succession records would expose old refusals, disputed heirs, and private concessions. Veyla let them finish. A law hidden to preserve peace becomes a weapon for whoever controls the hiding. Caith placed the silent archive under independent custody shared by guild, packs, and crown. Every destruction order would require 3 seals. Every erased clause would remain visible beside its replacement. Every succession hearing would admit technical witnesses before judgment. Only then did Veyla accept the restored guild seal. The coronation resumed 3 days later, not beneath the crown-only copy. The statute was reconstructed from lawful fragments, blind embossing, pack refusal marks, and Tomas's protected margins. It did not grant Caith automatic legitimacy. Grafin and Hollowmere questioned his blood right. Veyla questioned his use of continuity authority. Caith answered publicly. He admitted burning the disputed folio without demanding its full chain. He admitted sealing Veyla beneath the archive to avoid crisis. He did not call himself deceived as though deception erased choice. I chose certainty because it protected my accession, he said. Morkan shaped what I saw. I chose not to ask what had been removed. The pack witnesses accepted his hereditary claim. Veyla did not yet accept the archive condition. What prevents the next king from calling witnesses dangerous? Caith removed the wolf crown from its cushion and placed it on the witness table. A king who cannot be witnessed lawfully will remain uncrowned. The promise entered the statute before she touched her seal. Crown, pak, archive. All three appeared on the same surviving copy. Only then did Caith receive the crown. Months later, the silent archive no longer lived beneath a locked palace. Its upper doors opened onto the moon court. Apprentices read beside widows. Tomas's guild ring rested beneath his corrected record, on the desk where any reader could see what the old judgment had cost. Caith came without guards at the final reading hour. Veyla found him before the wide margins of the new succession statute. You left space, he said, so the living may answer the dead. He remembered. That was not enough. But he had returned often enough to understand that memory without changed conduct was only sentiment. I once loved the way you read law, he said. Then I chose the throne when your reading threatened it. Veyla closed the ledger. And now? Now I would rather be witness than protected from what a witness may say. She did not offer forgiveness. She moved one chair away from the table. Not beside her. Near enough to read. Then begin with the margin, she said. Caith sat where she placed him. Above them, moon parchment moths folded their silver wings around words no fire could erase alone.